Hello everyone, I hope everyone's having a good summer. My name is Monica Berry and today I'm going to be presenting on Southwest border, smuggling, trafficking, and solutions. So getting started, my discussion topic is, while the war on drugs in Mexico is in full effect, smuggling continues to occur across the US border every day without stopping for multiple reasons. 1. Multiple sources of smuggling that continue to adapt each year. 2. Violence in Mexico stimulates this cycle. 3. U.S. smuggling and encouragement. And 4. Not enough personnel and an increase in amount of smugglers. So I wanted to begin with kind of explaining why I chose Southwest border. And I'm starting with a quote from the FBI. This is from an archive post, though, from 2010. So as we know, so much has changed in the drug war and under this topic since 2010. But I feel like it did a good job of explaining a little about the Southwest border. Quote, the southwest border of the United States is the principal arrival zone for most of the illicit drugs smuggled into the United States, as well as the predominant staging area for the drug's subsequent distribution throughout the country. According to El Paso Intelligence Center drug seizure data, most of the cocaine, foreign source marijuana and methamphetamine, and Mexican source heroin available in the United States is smuggled into the country across the southwest border. The southwest border is particularly vulnerable to drug smuggling because of the enormous volume of people and goods legitimately crossing the border between the two countries each day. So clearly there's a lot at stake because it's so vulnerable, because it's so high profile, and that's one of the leading reasons why it's so hard to catch these smugglers. So sources of smuggling, there's legal ports, tunnels, aircraft, boats, and hiking or by back. So we've seen a big decrease in people just hiking across the border and having it in their backpacks. And legal ports is the biggest source and way that people are getting into the US from Mexico and bringing all of these drugs. So this quote is from an article called Why the US-Mexico Border Wall Wouldn't Stop Drug Smuggling. And I feel like it kind of does a good job of explaining how they're getting in through legal ports. Quote, most of the drugs smuggled into the U.S. from Mexico no longer arrive on the backs of those who cross illegally. Instead, according to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, most of the smuggled marijuana, as well as cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamines, come through the 52 legal ports of entry on the border. These ports have to process literally millions of people, cars, trucks, and trains every week. Traffickers hide their illicit cargo in secret state-of-the-art compartments designed for cars or under legal goods and trailer trucks. The fact that they're getting through the legal ports makes a lot of sense to me because if there's so many people coming through the legal ports each day, there's no way to check every single person. It is a successful way to get those drugs across. It is proving to be one of those leading reasons. So the next topic we're going to be diving into is tunnels, which is another big way that smugglers are getting these illegal drugs into the U.S. This next quote is from an article called Drug Smuggling and the Endless Battle to Stop It. Quote, while the majority of smuggling attempts to happen in the ports of entry, the biggest loads of drugs enter San Diego through tunnels. The ones equipped with rails can carry packages as big as 35 tons. So my big question with tunnels is how are we finding them? In these articles, they talked about old warehouses where they would find them there. But to me, how do they legally get permission to go to those warehouses and search them because you do need a warrant? And so I think this is kind of an interesting topic and I want to hear what you guys have to say. What do you think about these tunnels and what are some ways that we can find them easier? Is there a way to find them easier? A lot of questions surrounding the tunnel system, but it's impressive that there's so many of them and I just wonder how many there are to discover. So the next source of smuggling I'm going to talk about is land, sea, and sky. So, quote, smuggling in the ocean has evolved from jet skis dropping off packages on deserted beaches near San Diego to multi-day expeditions, taking ships 150 miles west into the ocean and as far north as San Francisco. From 2011 to 2016, border officials said that there were 309 known attempts to smuggle drugs across the border using boats. Officials said there was no way of knowing how many boats actually reached shore. Customs and Border Protection data showed that the ultralight aircraft may have been used to transport drugs on 534 occasions from 2011 to 2016. Drones have also been used. So to me, this is just saying that as we, crack down on land, they're just finding other ways to get across. So they're going by boat, they're going by plane, they're doing everything they can. They're going underground, they're doing all they can to get these goods to the US because it's such a huge part of their industry. So this isn't too shocking to me, but it is interesting that there are 309 known attempts to smuggle across the border using boats in just 5 years or so. So this next slide is called Global Substance Seizures, and it's from the UNODC. And it shows two different pie charts. So one says share of total numbers of individual drug seizures. To me, this means how they got caught. So 46% by air, 46% auto train, only 8% maritime. The other one is share of total quantity of drugs seized. So to me, this means the amount of drugs found. Please excuse me if I'm wrong, or if you think it's supposed to be read in a different way. I'd love to kind of understand. This one's a little tricky to me. But the total quantity of drugs seized, I see 35% maritime, 6% air, and 59% auto or train. So that's just a little bit about the different ways that the drugs are getting in, and we can see that auto or train is one of the biggest kind of areas regardless in both departments. That's how they're getting caught because that's the most popular way of getting across. Okay, so moving on to violence in Mexico. This is something we've been discussing a lot throughout this class, and to me, I read El Narco last week, the past couple weeks, and it was such a big it was an eye-opening read about the violence because it got specific and it really painted the picture of what it's like to be in Mexico in this violence. Quote, traffickers have made a concerted effort to send a public message through their bloody campaign of violence. They now often resort to leaving the beheaded and mutilated bodies of their tortured victims out for public display with the intent of intimidating government officials and the public alike. They are going for the scare tactic. They want the public to be afraid of them. They want the government to be afraid to mess with them. And they want the competing cartels to be afraid of them. So by putting these graphic images and tortured victims on display, that's their way of saying, don't mess with me, and I'm powerful. So it's kind of a power play. Quote, the main reasons for the spike in violence are the splintering, reconstructing, and growing competition among the DTOs, and DTO means Drug Trafficking Organization, just FYI, and other organized crime groups in Mexico. The current criminal organization landscape is exceptionally fluid. Many groups operate more on a local cell-based level, and their association with other groups may shift with business interests. Many of these groups not only are involved in drug trafficking, but also engage in other profitable crimes, including kidnapping, assassination, auto theft, prostitution, extortion, money laundering, software piracy, resource theft, and human trafficking. It's a business. It really is a business, and it's a power play to see which business is most terrifying and most powerful to this world. So I think that violence has a lot to do with why people are still getting involved in the cartels and why it's growing, because people don't have a choice. You either do it or you die. All right, next up, we're going to talk about U.S. encouragement in this ever-going problem of drugs crossing the border and smuggling. Quote, Mexico's large drug cartels, including El Chapo Sinaloa cartel, which is estimated to supply between 40 and 60% of the cocaine and heroin sold on the streets in the United States, are the dominant wholesale suppliers of illegal drugs in the United States. Supply and demand. We've, studied this in our business classes and economics. We want the drugs, so they're providing us the drugs because it makes them money. And it really is more of just, as I've mentioned, a business play and a money play, trying to get as rich as they can. The next quote is, and thanks to the deterrence capacity of U.S. law enforcement, insofar as Mexican drug trafficking groups do have in-country operations in the U.S., such as in wholesale supply, they have behaved strikingly peacefully and have not resorted to the vicious aggression and infighting that characterizes their business in Mexico. So the U.S. has been spared the drug traffic-related explosions of violence and that have ravaged so many of the drug-producing or smuggling areas of Mexico. if there's so much violence going on in Mexico, what's going on in the US on the other side once it comes here? And I've learned that it really is just a business trade. It's professional for the most part, as professional as it can be. But that's why we're not seeing the crazy violence that Mexico is. So last but not least, I want to talk about personnel and increase in smuggling and really looking at why this industry continues to grow despite the war on drugs. Quote, since 2012, the number of traffickers apprehended at the U.S. borders has steadily increased from 364,768 to nearly 500,000 in 2014. From 2012 to 2015, the U.S. Border Patrol has seized more than 8.2 million pounds of marijuana, 32,600 pounds of cocaine, 34,000 ounces of heroin, and 17,600 pounds of methamphetamine. These are all from drugabuse.com, the Drug Trafficking Across Borders article. So taking a look at this graph or chart, we see the source is CBP.gov, but this is Border Patrol seizures by substance and year. So if we look at the nationwide total, we see it's 2,323,523 pounds. We are looking at the 2012 statistics. So you can see 99.9% coming through the southwest border is marijuana, followed closely by 92.4% in methamphetamine. If we move on and look at the 2015 chart, you can see that it's actually decreased for the nationwide total. And this is what Border Patrol has seized. So although we say we've gotten more, this chart is saying that we actually are getting less. If you look specifically at the southwest border, it also changes as well. So if you look at the southwest border in 2012, we seized 2,313,983 pounds. And in 2015, we seized 1,555,552 pounds. And looking at the specifics, meth and marijuana are almost exactly the same. 99.9 for marijuana, 99.8 for meth. So something to think about. Moving on to substance seizures, also by CPB organization. You can see if we just focus on the southwest border sectors, 99.5 is marijuana. Almost the entire bubble is just completely green. So that is what we are getting the most of. Of course, this data is a few years old, so this is ever changing. Some of the other statistics we've read today and analyzed have shown that meth is increasing. A final note on this topic, just a couple quotes that stood out to me concerning the present day ordeals, the wall, if we will. So, quote, but the fences did not stop the drug smuggling. With a near infinite supply of money and resources on the other side, drugs continue to move under, around, and through anything the country builds. No wall will stop them. This was taken from an article that did directly address the Trump administration and the wall that's being proposed to be built. And they're arguing that it's, as we've seen throughout this presentation, there are so many ways that the drugs are getting to the U.S., a wall isn't going to stop them. They have the tunnels, they have the boats, they have the planes. Next quote. San Diego, at least, would benefit more from additional personnel, training, and investment in investigative tools like wiretaps and paid informants. They're saying they need more people and more tools rather than building a wall. And I agree. I think that there's enough proof that shows that there's so much going on and so many different ways the drugs are getting in that I don't think the wall will do much. They'll do whatever it takes to deliver to us. So I don't think a wall will necessarily stop this all. It's impossible to seize every single foreign substance and illegal substance coming into the U.S. So just another thing to think about. But thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I look forward to hearing all of yours. I hope you have a great rest of your summer, and I will include my works cited at the end of this presentation. Thank you.